Yo, Julius, it's your girl Raven Chapman, the Omen. Just want to give you a big shout out here from the UK. And Ring IQ, you're the man. Thanks so much for your support.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Another angle of a story we talked about in my previous video. Michaela Mayer, unified super featherweight champion Michaela Mayer, saying, I'm definitely going to take it to her. I have every intention of stopping her. Her being Alicia Baumgardner, this division's reigning WBC champion. Michaela said, honestly, I think I will break her down. And I don't put it past that I will stop her if she doesn't respect my power. I do have power. Ask my previous opponents. They know I have power. They have been hit by me and they have felt my pressure. If she doesn't respect my power, then she will get stopped. I will overwhelm her with punches, and I have seen how she handles pressure. She doesn't know how to handle pressure. She falls all over the place. She doesn't know how to hold herself on the inside. And once I catch on to her, I am definitely going to take it to her. I have every intention of stopping her. If it's Michaela's intention to pressure Alicia Baumgardner and stop her, from a strategic standpoint, why would she give that fundamental detail away? She's essentially given away what could have been an element of surprise, as most would have expected Michaela to use her height and use her length to keep it long and loose and on the outside. You're giving her that to prepare for. A statuesque fighter that means to be physically imposing in the fight, mid-range to inside. You've just given that fundamental detail away. Michaela Mayer, if she were to win the fight, with Alicia Baumgardner, she says she would give Choi 4 weeks to accept an offer. If she doesn't do it and she wants to bullshit and demand crazy things and not lock down a deal, then I will move on and just vacate my belts. I don't care that much. I'm here for the big fights. Nobody knows about Choi because she's been running around doing nothing. I don't sit around waiting for nobody. So if she doesn't want to fight, then she will miss out on a payday. Exactly what I said to Baumgardner. And it is true that not very many people are familiar with Hyun-Mi Choi. She hasn't been very active the last 4 years. She's only been fighting once a year for the last 4 years. She's the longest reigning champion in this division, but you wouldn't know it. Because she doesn't have the buzz that Alicia or Michaela have. Some admire and understand the honesty and straight talking, the straight talking from Michaela Mayer, and accept it's just part of being the big sell. The rivalry with Harper never reached its natural conclusion, at least not yet. But the feud with Baumgardner feels far more personal. Mayer agrees. She was quoted as saying, I was thinking about that the other day. I thought, I didn't like Terry Harper, but I really don't like Baumgardner. It was all business at first. Like I said, I never heard of Baumgardner until I turned pro a few years ago. We've offered her the fight on a couple of occasions, and it didn't happen. First, it was during the pandemic, and she thought she didn't have enough time, and I fought Helen Joseph instead. And then the Nevada State Athletic Commission wouldn't approve of her because of the quality of her opponents. And if you look at her box record... Let me stop you right there, because that wasn't ahead of the Helen Joseph fight. Not that it matters, because Helen Joseph was coming off a loss anyway. This actually took place ahead of what became the Erica Farias fight. And I always found it strange that according to Michaela's story, the Nevada State Athletic Commission would not approve Alicia Baumgardner, who was coming off a win, but they ended up approving Erica Farias, who was coming off of 2 consecutive losses. You heard that right. Alicia Baumgardner at that time was coming off of consecutive wins, but she was inactive. But at the same time, the opponent Michaela ended up fighting. She was also inactive, but she was coming off of 2 consecutive losses at a higher weight. So why would the Nevada State Athletic Commission approve Erica Farias coming off of consecutive losses and not Alicia Baumgardner, who was coming off of consecutive wins? I'll tell you, I didn't believe that story then, and I don't believe it now. In any event, that's Michaela Mayer's version of the story. She said, if you look at her box record, it makes sense. So the rivalry really started then, when she started off. And she started saying stuff. But I offered her the fight 2 times. One time she said no, and the other, they wouldn't let her. So what does she want me to do? Then, when she stopped Harper, I said, right, let's go. You are the next one on my hit list. And then she started taking it all personally. She started saying, I want to build the fight. I agree. The rivalry between Michaela and Terry wasn't like this. And there was a rivalry there, don't get me wrong. It was organic, but it wasn't as nasty and spiteful as what we've been seeing from Michaela Mayer. You know, just the other day, Michaela posted a video of Alicia Baumgardner's only professional defeat, at the hands of Christina Lenardatu.
That was many years ago.
And if it was Michaela's intention to make Alicia look bad for having lost that fight so early in her career, at least from where I'm sitting, it didn't work, because all that proves is that Alicia Baumgardner's been matched tough. Michaela Mayer wasn't fighting a fighter like Christina Lenardatu in her first 6 or 7 fights. Alicia was.
That same Christina Lenardatu went on to become a 2-time 140-pound champion.
That's the caliber of fighter that she is, and in Michaela's first 10 fights, that wasn't the caliber of fighter that she was fighting. That's the caliber of fighter that Alicia was fighting. So how does that make her look bad?
It really doesn't. It comes off as petty.
Accenting the organic nature of the rivalry between them, domestic rivals, Michaela Mayer and Alicia Baumgardner. In truth, it's a fascinating fight to ways it's hard to get a mental image of how it's all going to play out, because Michaela Mayer has more than one way to go about fighting a fight. She can decide to box, keep it long, keep it loose, and try and keep Alicia Baumgardner behind her lean hand, behind her jab, or she can take it to her the way she's saying she's going to take it to her.
Get aggressive and go for a knockout.
Now, Michaela Mayer isn't a knockout puncher. She's an excellent boxer, don't get me wrong, but if anybody's got the edge in power, it's Alicia. So if you go getting aggressive, looking for a knockout, you might get yourself knocked out. That's usually what happens.
You give up your height and reach to Alicia, you're just bringing yourself closer to a power shot.
Michaela Mayer is the more statuesque fighter in the fight, the longer, rangier fighter in the fight, but if she's going to give up that height and give up that range to trade blows mid-range to inside deep in the pocket the way she did with Maiva Hamadouche, she's doing half the work for Alicia Baumgardner. Alicia doesn't have to find her because you're bringing the fight to her, at which point you're in the kill box, you're in the kill zone, you're within range of her power shots. That's what Michaela Mayer has to be mindful of, though it's not one way. Alicia Baumgardner has to be careful not to let herself get outworked.
Alicia's a great counterpuncher, but not a volume puncher.
At least not characteristically, not so far. Alicia Baumgardner is more of a sharpshooter, a sniper. She likes to pick her punches.
Set them up and make them happen?
Or capitalize off the other fighter's mistakes. Capitalize off the other fighter's defensive lapses in judgment. If Michaela Mayer plans on being more of a volume puncher as opposed to a boxer in the fight with Alicia, Alicia has to be careful not to let herself get outworked. And
Alicia thinks she can knock out Michaela Mayer the same way Michaela Mayer thinks she can knock out Alicia.
sounds a lot like what Michaela Mayer wants to do, is hamper Alicia Baumgardner's accuracy with volume and aggression, crowd her, make her uncomfortable. In turn, Alicia Baumgardner must target the body, target the midsection. If she wants to bang in the booth, you should oblige her.
Give her what she wants and see who brought the bigger guns to the gun show.
If that's what she really wants, might actually behoove Michaela Mayer to use her height and use her length to keep Alicia on the outside as opposed to sacrificing that height looking to trade on the inside. Better still, that's what she's saying.
She said she wants to overwhelm Alicia with volume. She says she wants to stop her.
We'll see who ends up getting stopped. In men's bantamweight news, on the heels of Naoya Inoue's second professional victory over then-reigning champion Nonito Donaire, Paul Butler has revealed, Paul Butler, reigning WBO bantamweight champion, he has revealed that his team have already had talks with Naoya Inoue's reps about a potential undisputed WBA, WBC, IBF, and WBO bantamweight world title fight. Inoue's team want the fight next before he looks to moving up. So that means this year.
They need to get a move on before the WBO decides to make Jason Maloney Paul's mandatory challenger.
I can't stress that enough. Ideally, we should see Inoue versus Paul Butler happen in the near and immediate future, because the fight we just saw with Inoue, it didn't last very long. It only lasted 2 rounds. Get him back in there, let him splatter Paul Butler.
You make Paul an offer he can't refuse.
Those guys put some money in your pocket, you fly out to Japan, you get splattered, now Inoue becomes undisputed champion. Easy peasy, lemon squeeze.
They have to move on this because Naoya Inoue is a unified champion.
It's not just Paul Butler having to satisfy a mandatory you have to worry about. That also applies to Naoya Inoue, who has 3 alphabet titles.
There is some desire in some circles to see Naoya Inoue move up to super bantamweight and take on Stephen Fulton.
One of 2 unified champions in today's super bantamweight division, but Stephen Fulton
quite strategically posted this via his social media.
On the heels of Naoya Inoue's second round knockout of Nonito Donaire, Stephen says, "I need undisputed first before we discuss any other option."
I like the way he thinks.
Very exciting times between 118 and 122 pounds as it pertains to the Ring IQ pound-for-pound list. If Naoya Inoue is to get Paul Butler in the ring before this year is out, and he does so before Terrence Crawford locks horns with Errol Spence Jr., if Inoue splatters that guy the way we all think he's going to splatter that guy and becomes his division's undisputed champion, that will be enough for Inoue That'll be enough for Inoue to bump Terrence down to number 3. Bump Terrence down to number 3 until such a time as Terrence faces Errol Spence Jr. and beats him, effectively becoming a 2-time undisputed champion, which in turn will be enough for Terrence to reoccupy his number 2, maybe even his number 1 spot. It all depends on what happens between Joshua and Usyk and Canelo versus Golovkin. It all depends when it comes to Stephen Fulton, who has a very credible argument that is gaining a lot of credibility fight by fight to occupy a spot on the Ring IQ pound for pound list. Well, he just took care of his dual mandatory challenger, dual mandatory by way of both the WBC and the WBO. He just took care of Daniel Roman. The prediction stuck. I went with Stefan to win a points decision, and that's exactly what he did. The only other champion at 122 pounds, Murjan Akhmadaliev. He's going to be defending his 2 alphabet titles against Ronnie Rios later on this month. And Ronnie Rios is his mandatory challenger. If he makes it through that fight, and somehow, some way, a fight can be negotiated between Stephen Fulton and MJ Akhmadaliev. As a boxing fan, I give a fuck where it happens, whether it's on the PBC side of things or the Matchroom side of things. If MJ makes it through that fight, the only fight to make for MJ after that is the Stephen Fulton fight. It's the only fight to make, and I don't care where it lands. I don't care where it happens, so long as it happens. Let's say it happens, and let's say that it's Stephen Fulton that wins that fight. You know, Stephen Fulton already beat 2 active reigning world champions in today's super bantamweight division. He beat then unbeaten Angelo Leo, then unbeaten Brendan Figueroa. If he were to beat MJ Akhmadaliev, not only would he become the super bantamweight division's undisputed champion, but he'll actually have a stronger argument than Devin Haney, who was recently integrated into the list. Unbeaten, undisputed Devin Haney, who ranks in at number 9. He'd have a stronger argument than unified champion, unified 2 division champion, Shakur Stevenson and Errol Spence Jr. That's if Stephen wins, though something very similar applies if MJ were to win the fight, if MJ were to beat Stephen. If Murjan Akhmadaliev were to beat Stephen Fulton, that would be the 2nd active reigning world champion he's beaten. If it happens the other way and Stephen beats him, that'll be the 3rd active reigning world champion Stephen will have beaten, on top of becoming his division's undisputed champion. The argument is there. And the super bantamweight division needs that fight. Stephen says he wants it, though that's not the first time he's said that. What actual effort is going into making that fight happen, making it a reality? And that's not a question you just have to ask Stephen. You also have to ask MJ Akhmadaliev and the people over there at Matchroom. What are they doing? What effort, if any, is going into making that fight happen? Because it's the only fight to make. Put your thinking caps on, kids. Let's say Inoue gets Paul Butler in the ring before this year is out. He splatters that guy the same way he just splattered Nonito Donaire. He becomes the bantamweight division's undisputed champion. And let's say that the powers that be get the wheels in motion for a potential Stephen Fulton versus Murjan Akhmadaliev fight. We get another undisputed champion. Undisputed at 118 and undisputed at 122. We already know Naoya Inoue plans on moving up. Ideally, the situation between Stephen and MJ gets situated before that happens, so that the winner of their fight can face him upon his ascent to the super bantamweight division. In an ideal world, that's how it would happen, though things are seldom ever ideal in the world of boxing. Let's see if MJ don't make it past Ronnie Rios later on this month, and let's see if they don't make the fight between him and Stephen Fulton. If he does, so we can get an undisputed champion at 122 pounds.
The one person I believe that continues to be a roadblock, it's not Mayweather Promotions. Okay. Because I wish actually Tank Davis was with Mayweather Promotions, because I would have an easier time making this fight than making it with Al Heyman. Oh, Al Heyman is the person that is keeping these fights from happening. That's the bottom line.
There goes Oscar De La Hoya, blowing hard and making bold proclamations saying he's ready to make a Gervonta Davis multi-million-dollar offer to fight Ryan Garcia in November. I'm willing to make this fight available on DAZN and Showtime pay-per-view. Split it right down the middle, and let's make this fight happen. Bullshit. It's bullshit. You know, Ryan Garcia, Golden Boy Promotions, Gervonta Davis, and Mayweather Promotions, they've been going back and forth like this, by my count, for at least a little over a year, maybe 2 years now. It was some months ago when Leonard Ellerbe claimed that they already made an offer to Ryan Garcia to take on Gervonta Davis, and in so many words, they blew it.
I don't know what he said, but we try to make this fight. For those that don't know, we tried to make this fight before. The kid Ryan Garcia. We tried to make the fight. He chose. What happened, Leonard? You know. Get a whole breakdown.
Yeah. Yeah, I tried to make the fight, and they didn't want to fight. Bottom line. Say it again? Yeah, exactly.
He said that I guess he was going to do an exhibition with Pacquiao instead of fighting. You know, you get to do an exhibition when you retire. So you can.
Those sound bites are from months ago.
Months later, Ryan Garcia is stating he won't allow Golden Boy to prevent the war with Gervonta Davis.
Yet according to Oscar, he doesn't have to worry about Golden Boy because they're on board. They want to do the fight.
Golden Boy will not be able to prevent it, Garcia said. They can't. I won't allow it. There's no way. I will go to war to fight Tank. I'm ready to do whatever I've got to do because at the end of the day, that fight is going to get me my respect. And I think I deserve that. So I'm up for the challenge. I'm very confident in beating him. He's a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. But I'm just that much greater. And I want to show him. I want to show everybody what I can do. And that's the fight to make. Everybody wants to see it. And I'm ready now. If you really want to show who ducked who, and you're really confident that I'm ducking, well then, we could record the entire negotiations. If you want to throw that in, I'm down to throw that in. I have never ducked anybody. With victory, Garcia believes either he or Davis would become boxing's next flag bearer. Over Canelo Alvarez, over everybody, said Garcia. I swear, I promise you, that's just what it's going to be. It's too monumental in truth. Garcia versus Davis at the box office would do well commercially. I'm sure of that. But you have to do the fight in order to get to that point. You have to do the fight in order for that to happen, and that's not about to happen.
Oscar De La Hoya says Al Heyman's the reason the fight hasn't happened yet.
That he would be happy to work with Mayweather Promotions on the fight as opposed to Al Heyman because Al Heyman's the reason the fight hasn't happened. But when it comes to Mayweather Promotions, Leonard Ellerbe, Floyd Mayweather...
I don't know what he said, but we try to make this fight. For those that don't know, we tried to make this fight before. The kid Ryan Garcia. We tried to make the fight. He chose. What happened, Leonard? You know. Get the whole breakdown.
Yeah, I tried to make the fight, and they didn't want to fight.
It's a bona fide case of he said, she said, is what it is. Oscar's all over the place. He's talking about making Ryan Garcia versus Gervonta Davis. He's talking about working with Mayweather Promotions and Showtime. He's talking about selling the company.
That's right, he's talking about selling Golden Boy Promotions.
And we'll get into that in another video. For now, the question is, will all of this back and forth, all of this willingness from Golden Boy, from Ryan, from Oscar, are we to believe that all of this is going to lead to a fight between Ryan and Gervonta later on this year? Well, wouldn't hold my breath.
Ryan wants to be fast-tracked to a super fight at a time where he hasn't even fought for a world title yet.
Ryan, who says, I've had to deal with a lot of disrespect toward me as a fighter, and maybe it's because a lot of people don't think you're behaving like a fighter. You're too much of a prima donna.
That's where the disrespect comes from.
Nobody believes you're about to fight Gervonta Davis when Golden Boy Promotions had no interest in putting you in there with Devin Haney, but they're going to send you to Showtime to fight that guy.
I mean, yeah, maybe Gervonta is a bigger draw than Devin Haney.
So there is a financial incentive to fight him, but I hardly think they're going to let you go to Showtime to do it.